Welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Good. Today, we're diving into a topic that every leader should care about, but that often gets overlooked: how to build a true sense of community in the workplace, especially when teams are dispersed or stretched across different locations. My guest today, once again, is Dr. Karla Van Havel, an executive coach, leadership strategist, and scholar who has spent years researching what makes people feel connected, included, and empowered at work. In fact, she's dedicated her PhD to studying community in organizations. She has published several book chapters and an academic journal article, and she has developed her own validated proprietary assessment to help leaders measure and strengthen it. Karla works with executives and organizations through speaking, coaching, and workshops, helping leaders not only achieve results, but also create cultures where people feel like they truly belong. We're going to explore why community matters in this episode, how to build it, and what leaders need to know if they want to take their teams from good to great. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Welcome to the program again, Karla.
Thank you so much. Great to see you again.
Love to just remind our listeners of your background and really why did you focus your doctorate studies on organizational community, and how do you help leaders today in that regard?
Yeah, well, I found in working with different organizations over the years that they were really struggling with how to bring people in, how to help people feel like they belong, how to create engagement, how to increase trust. Struggling with a lot of these different issues in the workplace. And I began to research that and think, oh, this might be a really strong area of interest. Well, from there, my research and studies expanded to realize what community meant and what it didn't mean. And then I started looking around and saying, well, haven't we always had community? What does this look like? And I realized what's missing is the communities that we used to have. For example, a lot of people used to build community through volunteer organizations they were involved in. Well, those numbers have decreased over the years. Another way we built community was through involvement in religious organizations. Those numbers have decreased over the years. We used to build community in our neighborhoods, in the area where we lived, and that's changed. After World War II, architecture actually changed in the United States, where people used to sit on their front porch and visit with their neighbors. We would have those talks as people would walk up and down the street. Now houses are built with the garage out front. So what happens? We drive home, we drive in the garage, we go inside the house through the garage, and we never see anyone. So building community in our neighborhoods has become even more of a challenge in many different parts of the United States and elsewhere. So these types of communities were really lacking. And then I took it back to the workplace and said, okay, well, where are we spending most of our time? We spend more time at work than we actually do with our own families. So community can really have a great meaning in that workplace. Now, what's changed there? People used to work for 30 years in one workplace. We don't do that anymore. Things have really changed. Nowadays, people might stay at a workplace for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and then they change. So the question becomes, how do you build a community when we are geo-dispersed? Often now, especially after COVID with flexible work schedules and things like that, we have turnover and we have other things going on in our lives. High priorities, speed has increased with our expectations and our output. So that became my area of interest. So to turn that over, what I've done is after 17 years of researching and studying in this area and working with many different organizations, is I have been able to build an assessment, which was published back in 2016 called the Workplace Community Insight. And we can dive into that a little bit more as we go along, Charles, if you'd like to. But I just want to mention that it's a tool and an opportunity to assess where communities are at in the workplace. And then it allows a measurement tool so you can see where you're at in the future.
We're going to get into that more later. When you talk about building a sense of community in the workplace across dispersed organizations, what do you really mean by community? Let's define that first, if we could.
That's a great question because community really is defined by different people in different ways. And culturally, that changes too. So when I did my studies, I did work internationally and looked at a lot of different regions. And when you say the term community, the first thing you need to do is to define it. and you have to figure out how others define it. One of the first things I suggest when somebody comes to me and says, okay, well, I want to build sense of community, but I just want like one step, one tool. What can I really do like right now today? Well, I'm going to say, get to know your people. Take the time, talk to them, build that relationship, build that connection. And by doing that, you can also find out how they identify community and also what their priorities are in terms of community. So I do have a formal way of breaking down community through my assessment, through my workshops, through my coaching, and it's called the BRING method. I use that acronym to talk about bringing people together, right? Because that's really what community is. We're bringing people together. So the different letters stand for B is belonging and boundaries. And this is about memberships, just understanding who's in and who's out of that community. The R briefly stands for reciprocity. It's mutual influence. What do I bring to the table? What do they bring to the table? This is about voice and agency. Then we have the I, and that it stands for the interwoven story. This is your shared emotional connection. And just a note on this, you don't always have to be present in the story to understand it, relate, and empathize with it. But through good storytelling, that can bring you into the story and help everyone to feel included. Then the N is having your needs met. That means understanding your needs, understanding your values, understanding those of your team, and making sure those needs are being met. And then finally, G is for having goals in common. This is the future focus. This is about how we're moving forward together. So, those are the 5 defined areas that I use through my research and that I found to be really strong amongst different organizations. But if someone isn't ready to go that step and they're just saying, what's one thing I can do? What's just one thing? I'm going to say, going back to that, which I mentioned earlier, take the time and get to know your people because that can have a huge impact.
I love that acronym. And I'd like to play devil's advocate for a minute because leaders are overwhelmed right now. Why should leaders care about cultivating a sense of community? What are some of the real benefits?
Yeah, it's fascinating. There are so many different benefits that come up with this. Studies have shown that you can actually increase your speed of decision making. It increases trust. It can reduce turnover. It can increase clearer communication and even improve overall well being. So, those are some pretty positive reasons to consider bringing a sense of community to your organization and to your team.
I agree with you. How about some examples? Could you share an example of an organization who has created this strong sense of community and what makes their approach really stand out?
Sure. There's one organization in particular that I worked with that I really enjoyed the partnership that we had. And they did have regions international. So I was able to work with all of the different areas of this company. And at the time, they knew this was a priority. They had identified it. They were like, yes, we really want to work on this. We want to work on having a sense of community in our environment, especially because we are geo dispersed. We're all working on these different projects. We have different parts and different pieces, but eventually all those parts and pieces have to come together. So, how do we work together to bring the pieces together so we're all moving together in one direction? In working with this group, we were able to find different tools and different things that they could do. There's tools and techniques. So, Charles, I know you love to talk about AI too. So, let me just take a quick opportunity to bring that in here because AI does offer some tools when we're talking about this and how to really bring it together. And some of the things that we did is we set up a virtual water cooler. This is using AI, using other tech to bring people together in a space where they can share and talk as though they're having coffee together over the water cooler. It's casual getting to know each other, building those relationships and getting to know your people, right? Just to go back to that. So that's one way that AI and technology can be brought in to help with that. There's other ways that AI can offer a supporting role in this, such as offering personalized communication, tracking communication, pulling data to find out when are people most engaged? When are they at their best so that we can really work together and dive into these things and create more meaningful connections? So I like to bring those tools in and just mention that those are out there. And in working with this one particular company, in the example I'm sharing with you, those are some of the different things that we did. We also did measurements to find out where they're at, where they want to be, and then we routed a path from point A to point B to figure out how they could get there. Now, since doing that, I'm happy to say that in this particular company, they were voted Forbes America America's Best Employers. They are on that list, and that's pretty notable. And they're also highlighted for having strong employee satisfaction ratings and a positive work culture. Knowing that that focus was there, taking the time, building those connections, and building a sense of community really came back in the results. And you could actually see the bottom line and the results and the awards that they got because of this focus.
Love that example. Thanks for sharing it. And I like how you brought AI in as well. It's somewhat counterintuitive because you would think with AI, with technology, it really wouldn't build that sense of community, just keep us more isolated and feeling alone.
It can. It's kind of a double edged sword. So it can have some positives like using it kind of in the background to help you with these things, to help you with the measurement, to help you understand when people are most engaged, to help with those communications. Even tracking communications. If you work in an organization with a lot of people, it can be easy to forget whose birthday's when, who has how many kids, what their kids are involved in. So you can use this as a way of tracking those connections and those relationships to make sure that when you come back to talk with somebody, you're up to date on where they're at. And you can come in and go, wait a second, I remember your kid was trying out for baseball this year. Did they make the team? Really opening up that conversation. So AI can be used in that way. Now, if you try to use AI to replace the human connection, yeah, that's not going to work out in building a sense of community. So it's a double edged sword. It depends on how you use the tools, just like with anything else.
Got to leverage them the smart way. You're right. Well, how can leaders tell if their teams have community? Let's talk about more about your assessment tool.
Certainly. So, if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about the assessment tool, this is the Workplace Community Insight. And the assessment tool is one that we come in and put into your organization and take it with your people. And I should take just this moment to mention that when we talk about doing the assessment and we talk about sense of community, it's best done in small groups and teams. This is not something you're going to administer to everyone in the organization at once and expect 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 people to suddenly overnight, like a snap of the fingers, boom, we're going to have a sense of community. That's not how it works. So I want to be a little realistic here in the expectations. But what we can do is we come in and we start out by measuring your small groups with the assessment and find out where they're at now. And it begins with understanding what community means to them. And then it asks several different questions. It takes about 20 minutes to take the assessment, not long at all. And then from there, we're able to pull that data and give you some analytics so you understand where they're at. We actually map it so you could see where everyone's at. And then we co create an environment through 2 half-day workshops. And in co creating that environment, we're really looking at what do we want community to look like in this workplace with these people. Every person's different, every culture's different, every workplace is different. So you want to keep all of that into consideration. This is very customizable. So during those workshops, you learn what this means, how you can use the tool, and how you can continue to develop from there. Now, my suggestion is after the 2 half-day workshops is that you do some individual coaching and some group coaching to continue building that momentum because we know consistency and clarity are key. If you want to take learning and make it actionable, you need to have that consistent communication and you need to continue to build. You can't just go in one day, take a magic pill, and have it be done. You need to continue to build on it. So that's what we do. And then my suggestion is at the end, 9 months or a year, the team retake the assessment, see where they're at, see where they're going, and what things might come next.
Love that. Sounds like a lot of value there.
It
Where would they
is,
get
yeah.
more information about that?
Certainly. You can reach out to me at Karla at centerfordynamicknowledge.com or go to the website at centerfordynamicknowledge.com and we can provide any more information that you might like or might want to have as you make a decision on whether or not this is something you would like to implement in your organization.
Before we wrap up today, love to always have a call to action. So, how do leaders start building community tomorrow? What are the first steps they could take to really make a noticeable difference with having this community being built stronger within their organization?
Certainly. So, the first step, like I mentioned before, is getting to know your people. That's step number one, no matter what. Take the time to get to know them. Secondly, I would develop that database. Start tracking that information so you stay on target with those connections and you're able to follow through. I know for myself, I work with a lot of different people, and it's important to be able to remember who's where and what's going on with them. So that way you can have those personable interactions. Another third step that you might consider doing is to sit down and really define community and see what kind of a priority it is for your people and your organization. Is a workplace community a direction that they want to go? Just as an example, Charles, I'd like to give a little metaphor here to tie this in. I say that when you're looking at building a workplace community, it's like planting a seed. You're going to have a strong foundation. You're going to give it the water. You're going to give it the sunlight. You're going to give it the nutrition so that it can really grow and bloom. But if the seed decides it's not going to grow and bloom, you kind of have to work through that. And so, what we want to do is provide that foundation, provide the nutrition, provide that sunlight, and set up the ideal situation for workplace community to grow. But we've got to make sure you have the right seed in there first.
Thank you so much, Karla, for joining me today and sharing all of this expertise and experience on building a sense of community within these organizations. Remind our listeners one more time how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
Thank you so much. Happy to. I'd love to connect with your listeners, and you can reach me at the website centerfordynamicknowledge.com or reach out to me by email at Karla, spelled with a K, at centerfordynamicknowledge.com.
Thank you, Karla, again for joining me. Thank all of you for listening. For every leader listening, take the first step, invest in trust, inclusion, and connection, and watch your organization transform from the inside out. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.